Black mask, I'm a nuisance, pound and a plan, trying to be Bruce Wayne. I ain't slowed down since about last May, cause this grind don't sleep and I dream all day. And I'm far from sane, cursed with a gift, my only saving grace. Firstborn son and they think I'm crazy, till the sky falls and they see my reign. First thing, they don't know about the vision, no wonder why there's all eyes on me. Came from a place where the grass ain't green, so the blood, sweat and tears really stain my tea. And I can't find sleep, always awake, guess it ain't that deep. Everywhere I go, I'm just counting sheep, so I gotta lead the way like little Bo Peep on the kid.
Women's football, like any other commodity, faces growing pains. And as the sport continues to grow in prominence, the management of those on the field by those off the field is a necessary step to ensure everyone benefits from the newfound exposure. We take a look at the importance of agents, as well as the need for all athletes to be seen as professionals.
I hear horror stories. I think because a lot of female players don't understand properly what an agent should be doing for them. I know that some agents basically are just taking money from players and doing very little, doing the very minimum in terms of what they should be doing. You know, your role as an agent really is to do the best for your player's career. You know, put them in a club that suits them, make sure that they're earning a fair wage, make sure that they're happy. You know, you're sort of helping manage their career. And some agents, I think, are you know, they see the chance just to make a quick buck, and you get some agents who are just signing up as many female players as they can without doing any due diligence, without checking the player out, without looking at where the player could play, and then just basically saying to the player, okay, you give me a certain percentage of your wages. I've even heard some agents that charge their players on a monthly fee, even though they're not doing anything for them. They're literally just taking money off them. And I think that is the danger, that with the success of women's football, that you are going to start seeing that with, you know, certain people thinking, well, I can make a quick buck here.
A minute in the championship, there are some teams that are full-time, but the majority are part-time. And I just think, obviously, if you want it to be a level playing field, either everyone has to be part-time or everyone has to be full-time. Obviously, I'd prefer it to be full-time. I think, obviously, for a lot of girls and women in football, that is the dream, just to have playing football as your job. And I would like to see at some point the championship become full-time as well.
I think it's really important. You know, over the last few years, the amount of teams that have turned from being semi-professional to professional is quite high. You know, having the backing from the men's side of the team of the club is so important. And you know, the likes of, you know, Liverpool as a club, they probably shouldn't be where they are, with, you know, how successful the men's side are at the minute. You know, teams like Liverpool should probably be in WSL 1. But then we've got teams in WSL 1 that should be more professional. You know, there's so many players still to this day that are working, you know, full-time jobs alongside playing football. Even at Wales here, we've got girls that work 9 to 5 and then they're expected to train, you know, till 7 till 10 at night and still perform whilst they're coming into international duty. There's such a big gap at the minute between professional and being professional every day. So everything is solely based on you performing on the pitch, to it being a hobby. But for these girls, it's not a hobby. It's what they want to do. But the chances that they've had or the opportunities that they've been given haven't been there at the minute. So which means they have to do a full-time job. And I think moving forward, that needs to change. You know, the amount of, when Chelsea played last year at Stamford Bridge, they had to sell out. When Tottenham played, at their stadium. It was more or less a sellout. So it can be done, and there is an audience there that want to, you know, follow the women's game and support it and do as much as they can to keep it growing. But I think as a whole, as clubs, we need to be better at, you know, helping that progression and making sure it happens as quick as possible.
Yeah, there's like, I can't describe how hard it is from coming in this year with Leicester. What, I've been in like 2-3 months now, but before that I was doing a 9 till 5 job myself. Well, I was working probably about 6 till 5, to be honest. Then going from training, travelling straight to training, what took me like an hour and a half, training for 2.5 hours, and then getting home at like 12 o'clock at night, and then doing the set, repeating that for 5 days in a row. It's probably the hardest thing you could probably do, depending on what kind of job you have as well. Um, but I do see why like a lot of the part-time teams are probably not up there and up to the standard that they should be. It's just because they're having full-time 9 to 5 jobs, and it is ridiculously hard. Yeah.
It's hard, it's tough. So I'm a sports development officer, so my finishing time is usually a little bit later. So usually I'm going straight from work in Leeds to play in Sheffield, play and train in Sheffield. So it does make the days long. It means that obviously I can't prepare properly like I'd like to, and also I can't recover like I'd like to. So it does make it hard. But I have been lucky. The job I'm in, my boss and the organisation are really supportive. So when I have got midweek games, they let me leave early if I need to. So that is nice. But obviously it is tough. It does make it hard work, and you do have to put obviously long hours in. But no, I enjoy it, so it makes it worth it in the end.
Hard, and I know mentally they find it challenging. The fact, you know, that they're up 7 o'clock to be able to get into work for 9. Then as soon as they finish, you know, they're preparing for training. They've got to travel 30-40 minutes to train, travel back, get home at 10:30. Then you're having to do that cycle again every day. They find it challenging, and you know, it's a shame really, because you know the amount of some of the girls, the abuse that they've received, you know, for performances, individual performances on the pitch. But people don't understand that, you know, for some players here, it's classed as, it's not their job. So they're coming in here and they've trained maybe twice a week for the past 4 weeks, whereas the majority of us are training every day for the past 4 weeks. So how can you compare that? You can't. So performances and individual levels are going to be different on the pitch, and you know, mentally away from the pitch, it's more of a challenge for them. But it's what we need to get better at, is supporting these players to be able to, you know, be the best, in the best shape, in the best in the best way that they can be to be able to perform. Because at the minute we're not helping them at all, because you know their hours in the day, they're constantly working, constantly switched on. You know, recovery days, they don't have recovery days because they're working. So it's, you know, it can't be compared to the men's game because of that particular reason, because you know so many of us are still doing jobs outside of playing football. I know for myself, I was coaching up until last year, 2-3 times a week, to enable that I could pay my bills, because I couldn't afford to be able to just have my football wage and not do anything on the side to try and help pay bills. And that's the reality of it, is that in the women's game we don't get paid as much as the men. We don't get as much support as them at the minute. So it's, you know, changing them things, that, you know, we're not asking for equal pay. We're not asking to be equal as the men, because their revenue is completely different. But what we are asking for is that, you know, you respect that we want to be a professional athlete, and to be a professional athlete you have to give a salary that we can live off, because at the minute there's so many girls that can't afford to live off the salary that they're given.
I'm not sure. I think obviously the clubs that are full time, they've obviously got backing from maybe the male clubs they're affiliated with or elsewhere. So obviously from club to club, it just depends on the budget really, and on whether it is feasible to go full time. But I think probably in the long term, maybe it is up to the league to decide whether either everybody is full time or everyone's part time, just to make it, like I said, a level playing field.
There's women's players out there at the highest level, and I could give several examples by name, but I won't, that are on less money than me playing the game that I'm covering. And so that's one of the challenges. There's this ethical line of, at what point do we start pumping that back in and championing the game? We've recently signed a partnership with a startup club called Wirral Phoenix. So that's it's their first season this year, and we're pumping support into there. We're giving them exposure and as much support as we possibly can. And it's challenges like that. It's more ethical challenges about where we're going and how we use our resources throughout this journey now. And it's a learning curve, and we're on it.
Women footballers in particular are very marketable. I think, when we look at the statistics of just women's sports that's getting enough media coverage, it's 4%, right? 4%, that's a very low number. And for me, especially being an agent within the areas of like the UK and USA in particular, where women's football is huge, it's big. But to know that only 4% of that is being covered, that's not good.
I think it goes back to what I was just talking about in terms of showing their personality. I think it's so important, because if you have a favourite player or a favourite individual, you buy into them as a person. And something that I really stand for with everything that I do, for me, it's about meeting someone, introducing myself, and building a genuine long-term relationship. And you can't do that with someone if you don't know about them, or you can't have a laugh with them, express yourself, find out about them. I think it's all about them being, again, their true self, who they want to be. And as long as they're not harming anyone or being offensive, I don't see there's any reason for them not to be able to be them true self. But again, it goes back to them being limited in some capacity. So them having their own brand and being someone that can be identified is so important, because if you go to someone like Megan Rapinoe, she is so outspoken and stands up for what she believes in, but that's part of her brand, and people know her, whether you like her, you love her, or you hate her. You know who she is because she's created that brand of, I will stand up for what I believe in, and I will stand my ground regardless of who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing. I think more people need to be like that, because regardless if you end up liking her or disliking her, you're aware of who she is, and she's making herself known, and she's a big presence in the women's game, and you need more people like that, not just on the pitch but off the pitch.
Every sport, the best of the best, needs to have that brand as well, to be able to speak out on various issues. So it's important. Now they might say they might not like it or keep limited, but I think Alex Morgan, very prominent, she tweets a lot as well. You understand what I'm saying? And people interact with her all the time. She's always saying, oh, I believe that Messi is the best football player. And so you could see that Marta's brand, Brazilian Marta, her brand was pushed forward as well. Maybe could the barrier be for the fact that she wasn't speaking, English so well at that time? How much could have been done with regards to that? Was there enough light shed on her at that time when she was, very much at her pomp? People would, go on YouTube and see her, but I could imagine somebody like that in her prime now, how much different it would have been, for the fact that you've got so much ability, and the brand creates itself based off of the ability. That's what I would say. Because even in football, Messi's not as outspoken as you would say Ronaldo is, but his ability is basically his brand. It does the talking. So I do think it's important, very important, especially for moving the women's game forward. If you have the ability, speak out as much as you can. And I don't think it should be limited to just the women's game. I think it should be done in the men's game as well. The bigger players, I understand I understand what's going on, but things must be put in place to just help improve the women's game with the quality of how it's been improving previously till now, it will just be a snowball effect. It will just continue to build, based off itself. So I'll say they go hand in hand, but one shouldn't be neglected without the other.
They definitely have got the ability to be more remarkable than what the average like sports fan might think, in all honesty. I mean, when you get to like the equal pay topic, that's a really big issue to overcome. And like any industry, sports is a business, and you are going to get paid what is coming in as well. But it's not. For example, the U.S. women's football team, they are just miles ahead in terms of marketability, talent, just overall global awareness than the men's team. They're just point blank more successful, and they should be making the same as, if not more than, the men's team. They've just brought more to football in the States than the men's team has, in my personal opinion.
From a marketing side, once again, being in the USA, it's big. When you have women like Megan Rapinoe and Crystal Dunn and those women, and so just working with the brands, the brands are now shifting towards saying, okay, we're seeing the success of like the women's national team, and we're seeing the success of England's national team, the women, and we're just seeing how the sport is growing. And we're seeing, there's an opportunity to get involved. But I think what's happening with the brands is that they're still trying to figure out exactly to what extent should they be involved. So from a marketing side for the females, it's, to the women footballers, and even like some of my clients, I try to tell them, I market my women footballers like I would my male footballers. So nothing changes. It's just obviously the gender. We push, as far as content, as far as highlights, how many goals are you scoring, how many assists do you have, just basically showing the everyday life of that footballer. And so just coming up with different marketing strategies. But I feel like they're very marketable. I mean, endless amount of opportunities. And I think if more brands tend to look into the sport and once again, like watch the sport and see the impact of how many women are fans and are supporting these women, even some of the men too, who are kind of like the allies, but they're super supportive. I think within the next few years, we'll see women's football will be definitely up there even further than it is now.
I think the major brands now are starting to come around to the fact that these people are icons for a lot of people around the world, and they can use that to their advantage through advertising or the kit releases. But I think where I've spoken about a learning curve, where we're all on this learning curve, I think the brands have been on it too. There's players like Rachel Yankee or Rachel Unit back in the day, or Rachel Finnis-Brown, that were icons of their generation, even Karen Carney. And they weren't on kit releases. You didn't see them in the windows at Sports Direct or the Nike stores. And now you're starting to see that, and it's working. I honestly can't get into the mindset of why they weren't doing it. I think where there is a glass ceiling for women in almost every walk of life, maybe it was happening at those brands. Maybe there weren't enough women in the boardrooms saying, have we thought about putting Rachel Yankee on a billboard because she is the best at what she does? And now there are people saying that. It's clicked, and they're like, that's a fantastic idea. Let's put the world's biggest players, the Ballon d'Or winner, on bloody big posters because it will help sell stuff. The more you raise their stature as well in society, the more useful they are in those branding techniques. And I'm glad it's starting to snap in their heads that they can use this. For instance, last time I was in Liverpool, I was walking down the road to my colleague's house. I saw Gabby George on a massive poster, and I was like, yes. Like, why is that rare? Why am I buzzing to see that? Like, people like that should be on big billboards. And I'm glad it's finally clicked into these brands' mindsets that you're allowed to do it, and that it's actually a good thing.
I think many people have just a purely negative attitude towards agents. I think the proof of the pudding is always in the eating in terms of when people deal with you. I like to think that clubs who I deal with, people that in the game that know me, know that I'm going to come to them with an honest opinion of a player, that I'm going to ask for a fair wage, not be overly demanding, and just really my focus is always on the best for the welfare of the player. And I think, fortunately, I've been able to establish that, and that's shown with the fact that I've got managers and coaches and people at clubs who ring me up saying what they're looking for, and if I can possibly offer something for that. So it's gone to the stage where I think if you behave properly, if you behave diligently, if your focus is always on the best for your player's career and the best football for your player, then I think people respect that, and I think you can do very well at this job.
I think there's a little bit of nervousness at the moment around this new interest in women's sport and in women's football clubs. And so rather than opening the door sometimes and saying, hey, come on in, meet these incredible players, I think sometimes there's a little bit of fear. Oh, what if they say something controversial? What if they say something interesting? Let's just monitor. Let's just see what they're going to say first. Let's just kind of keep our eyes on it. So I think there is a bit of a fear factor. But on the other hand, that's because women's football is now at this place where people do know the names of the players in the top teams, and they are starting to appreciate that they have these incredible stories. So I think there is a little bit of fear at the moment, and maybe a little bit of corporate branding around some people. I think that one of the most interesting things is actually when players retire. I'm so curious about what players go on to do afterwards when they feel a little bit more able. And the last thing I think on personality and voice, I obviously want my players to have a personality and a voice and to have that platform. At the same time, it's not up to them. It shouldn't be down to them to have bold opinions, and we shouldn't have to depend on them to stand up for things, because ultimately they're football players. So I don't think we should demand too much of players at the same time. Like, it's not their place to be role models all the time.
It is what it is. Used to tell the G's just think, now we think for the G's cause they lost to the game, I'm pissed. Then he put his life on the line for the line of his life, now he can't see without the tits. That's just the curse and the gift. In the end it is what it is. Try and blend in like my blood's not green. Lights always flash like a movie scene. Wanted this shit since about 15, but cause he said quit and jump on Dean. Mic in my hand, they know I'm the champ. Light-hearted, but I ride for the gang. When I'm on top, they'll know I'm the man. Guess they'll all still be ceiling fans. Tell me that you know how it feels. If you know how it feels, then why they give a man air? When I'm the gift and the curse, I was cursed with this gift. This life chose me, I swear. Marge always telling me quit, so I quit telling Marge I was tired of all them stairs. It was all do if you dare, so I dare to do, and the rest I put in prayers. Weren't all bad, and the bits had bits that were bad, but bro, it is what it is. Used to tell the G's just think, now we think of the G's cause they lost to the game, I'm pissed. Then he put his life on the line for the line of his life, now he can't see without the tits. That's just the curse of the gift. In the end, it is what it is.